Good afternoon, everyone. Seems like we're a bit short on time, so I'm just going to quickly run through the recent fire cases that SMIT Salvage has attended to recently. In this picture here, you actually see the Macondo incident, or the Deepwater Horizon, which to date is the largest oil spill that happened. Of course, SMIT was also involved in this particular incident, and it was truly unfortunate incident. But today I'm going to talk about the two incidents that happened on two big ships. Earlier today, this morning, my colleague Heyman touched upon on mega container ships, and usually what are the challenges that we face. In this particular instance, it's due to the sheer size and how do we respond accordingly. But first and foremost, just quickly run through on the possible sources and causes of fire that happened on board ships. The first thing that was also mentioned earlier today was mainly on the cargo being misdeclared. This has been quite an issue that has been happening recently. But as Salvos, that's not our objective. We are there to come up with a solution and, of course, to the best endeavors, provide solutions to them and prevent the oil spill as much as possible. Secondly, fires do happen also in the engine room, accommodation, or the boiler room due to various reasons, such as the overheating systems or leaking pipes. And more than often, you know that as a seafarer myself, sometimes we do smoke in the cabin, which we tend to just take it lightly. Now, the first container ship that was recently happened was back in 2018. This is actually the Maersk Honem. Just a background about what the sheer size of the vessel. It's 15,000 TEUs. So, as we all know, anything above 15,000 for now, TEUs are considered as a mega container ship. At a point of time, it was laden with approximately 12,400 TEUs. And the pollutants on board the vessel itself, as you can see here, is in the range of 2,700 of heavy fuel oil and 297 marine gas oil. Now the situation, it caught fire in the middle of the Arabian Sea, and where it was 680 nautical miles to the west of Mumbai and 700 nautical miles to the southeast of Salalah. We caught wind of the situation, and SMIT immediately contacted Maersk, and that's where they immediately know that the importance of engaging a salvage or a salvo to respond accordingly. The fire actually started in cargo hold 3, where they have actually stored a certain type of acid under deck. As we all know, the fire suppressant systems under deck are mainly the carbon dioxide system, which is essentially ineffective in fighting the fire. So when we were contracted, we immediately reached out to our partners also nearby, and we worked together with the Indian Coast Guard in responding to this particular incident. The Indian Coast Guard was actually the first responder and immediately tried to prevent the fire from spreading. Bearing in mind that this particular vessel is of the newer design where the accommodation block is more to the forward instead. Of course, when we were engaged, we immediately had to look at all the resources available within that area, noting the fact that it's very far from either Salalah or Mumbai. Of course, we found out that there were a couple of tugs nearby. We quickly chartered those tugs and instructed them to respond accordingly with the firefighting efforts. After that, once the fire has been put out, the fire was in control, we had to, of course, think, what is the next step? As a salvo, we have to work together with the ship owners and the authorities. Certainly, the vessel had to be towed away, and of course, knowing that the forward part of the vessel has actually been badly damaged, and we had to tow it from the stern, where we actually brought it to the Middle East, and thereafter into Jabal Ali, actually, to do the disposal onshore for the forward part. being a big vessel itself, it's going to be a waste that you're not just going to do minor repairs or as such. So the ship owners have decided to just cut away the vessel half of the accommodation block and for recycling, whereas the remaining half, or about 222 meters, was transported back via subsea semi-sub transport vessel over to Korea to be rebuilt. And this Mas Honam is actually now sailing, but renamed to the Mas Halifax. Moving on to the VLCC. This also has been mentioned actually earlier today. It's the new Diamond, of course, very huge crude carrier, 333 meters in length. And when you talk about the pollutants on board, it's minimal as compared to the amount of crude oil or cargo it was storing. The situation was at the point of time was back in 2020, where the pandemic was happening and a lot of the countries closed their borders to anyone. The New Diamond was actually carrying the Kuwait export crude, departing from the Mina Al Ahmadi and then traveling down the west coast of India, bound for Paradip port. So approximately about 40 to 50 nautical miles, it caught fire. Of course, SMIT got notified about this, and we immediately approached the ship owners to offer our emergency response salvage services. Together with the Sri Lankan Navy and the Indian Coast Guard, we successfully put out the fire. And in total, there were about 20 crafts that were involved in these firefighting efforts. As you can see here, aerial picture of all the crafts that were involved in putting out the fire, bearing in mind that the cargo here is crude oil and that we have to constantly do boundary cooling around the vessel to so that the crude oil do not heat up too quickly. And thereafter, fire is put out, and we just had to ensure that all the structure is all right. Inspection was done. And thereafter, with 2 million barrels, together with the ship owner, we had to do a ship-to-ship transfer of, again, Middle East to two other smaller tankers. Now, I come to the last bit, what we can actually learn with all these two particular fire incidents. We've been talking a lot about regulations, regular drills, what can be done, in terms of regulatory. But the essence here is just trying to share is the contracting of salvage services as soon as possible when there is an incident on board your vessel. I know at times there's always the management is thinking about the financial considerations at a point of time, but if we dwell too much, there will be potential or much bigger effects later on if there were delays. The second point was that the great effective communication and cooperation with all stakeholders, including the authorities, the salvors, the ship owners, the insurers, that we've successfully attended to these two particular incidents and in preventing a major catastrophe that could happen and affect the coastlines. With that, I've come to the end of my presentation, and of course, thank you for your attention.
Oil Spill India 2022 is dedicated to the Honorable Prime Minister's Swachh Bharat Abhiyan and Clean Seas.